Council meeting, Talbot County Council meeting, May the 12th. Would ask that everyone please rise with me for opening prayer, followed by the pledge of allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, with all of the suffering and concern that's happening in the world today, all the sickness and death, we ask that your comforting hand and spirit be upon those families and those friends who have been going through the ordeal of sickness with the COVID virus. We ask that you comfort those communities who have been impacted. We ask that you strengthen those community leaders and government who have to make the difficult decisions to keep people safe. We ask that we will continue pulling together as a nation, as a state, and as a county, so that we will come out this the better than we entered it. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Council, you do have before you an agenda. The chair would ask if there's any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda. Hearing none, the chair moves that the agenda be accepted with unanimous consent. We also have minutes, I believe, from April the 28th and May the 5th. We've had a chance to review those. Do we have any, no, I'm sorry, strike that. Are we showing both minutes from May the 28th and 5th?
They are both in here now. If one got added later, so if you haven't reloaded the other
mine did not refresh. That's my apologies. So you do have the May 5th minutes in there as well. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, the chair would ask that they also be accepted with unanimous consent. We do have disbursements from the May the 12th. Do we have any additions, deletions, or corrections to those disbursements? Hearing none, the chair would ask that they also be accepted with unanimous consent. Council, we're now going to get an update. You know, this COVID virus has changed everybody's world upside down, and probably none more than our Superintendent, Kelly Griffith. She's been just a steward on our morning phone calls at the EOC, putting together plans of action to feed students and to educate students and to keep her staff informed and engaged. And by the way, she's building a new elementary school. So just so many things to do, and then on top of it, trying to keep everybody safe. So we asked her to come and give us a presentation as to what all that's going on right now in Talbot County public school systems, and then what are the future plans, near future plans, if you have those, or distant future plans as well. So I don't think I'm blocking your screen, so I'll step to the side, and I'll turn it over to you, Kelly. Good seeing you.
Thank you very much for having me. We are now on actually week 8 of the closure and week 6 of continuity of learning. It's hard to believe it's been that long. I continue to be amazed, not only by the resilience and creativity and determination by our staff, but also our students. It's been amazing how there's been a lot of connections made. So I'm going to walk you through. I actually have a video right here in the beginning that talks a little bit about our continuity of learning plan, which I think is a great way for you to kind of see what's happening. So if you go to the next slide, thank you, Ms. Price, appreciate that. We're in the 4th quarter now, and so we are 4th quarter strong to the finish. And we are making sure we're reaching out to all of our students each week to make sure we're staying engaged. And if there is any student that's not staying engaged, we're actually able to do some wellness checks to make sure that we're giving that little boost to stay engaged, which is very important. So if you go to the next slide, there's a really quick video about continuity of learning. We should have checked the sound. I don't think the sound is working.
You might want to pause it until we get the sound.
Oh, there it is. Yep.
Sorry, Kelly, I don't think we're going to be able to play a video, but we can go to the next slide if you'd like.
That's fine, go to the next slide. Well, I can explain it all to you. So, continuity of learning started out when our students left on March 13th. They did take a packet of some work and some things that they needed to work on. What we started to do the very first week was to reach out to all of our families to make sure that we were staying connected with how our families wanted to engage during this time. That was really important. How would the teacher engage with the family? Then what we ended up doing was making sure that we got out the devices of iPads. We're very fortunate over the years that this county council and board has worked really hard to make sure we have a one-to-one initiative, K through 12. So we knew we had enough devices. What we have also found, though, is we don't have a lot of connectivity in some of our areas in Talbot County. So that has created more of a divide, and I'm going to talk to you about that in just a few minutes. So we spent a week getting out our iPads to kindergarten through 5th grade. And what we've done is anyone that doesn't have access to connectivity, we have been mailing home packets, and they actually get the courses that they're enrolled. So if they're at the high school level or the middle school level, whatever courses they're in, they actually get work from each of those courses. And the elementary actually has the packets from the 4 content areas. Continuity of learning, we use what's called FROG. It's our learning management system, and every student and every teacher has a FROG site, and the students can go on FROG and download their assignments. They can connect with their teachers, and they can upload assignments. So we knew we needed to reach out and get some more connectivity. So I'm going to talk to you about that in the next slide. This slide here is about the continuity of learning, and just from April 6th to May 7th, I wanted to give you some data. So as you can see, we've had 6,127 Google Meet sessions with teachers in their classrooms, 50,657 participants, and that's been a total session hours of about 24,000, an average of 35 minutes per session. The sessions do range in time because it depends on the age of the learner. For an example, I gave a virtual field trip last Friday for 3-year-olds. And they were at the board office, and I took them out and showed them their bus because they missed their bus. So we did a little 15-minute tour so that they could see where their bus was, and they knew where that was, and they were very excited. That was 15 minutes, and that's about all a 3-year-old can take on a virtual field trip. Our older students engage in longer sessions. So the sessions do change depending on the age of the student. And we are asking for each of the teachers for each core content to take a look at the essential standards for each course and to make sure that the students are getting assignments in those essential standards. That's the minimum that they're asked to do. They're also providing enrichments for each of those content areas. So if you go to the next slide. And this is a couple screenshots. I've actually sat in on some of the classes with the teachers and the students. It starts with maybe 1st or 2nd grade. The parent a lot of times gets in on the lesson, which is great, that's fine. A lot of times the lesson starts out with, Dr. Griffith, if you could go to a restaurant of your choice, where would you go? And then we talk about that. So sometimes they just want to talk about things, which I think is really important to note with the continuity of learning. We are providing academics to our students, but we are not forgetting about the mental health aspect of all of this. We have to be mindful that our parents are experiencing a lot of changes in their lives. Some parents are working from home. Some parents have lost their jobs. So there might be a lot of different things that are going on in our households. So we do try to check in and really check in personally with each kid to make sure we're checking in and making sure everything is going really well. We also have resources on our website for our parents. So there are resources for mental health, but there's also resources for yoga, there's resources for mindfulness, and also some areas where they can access Khan Academy if they need some tutoring. So we're really trying to keep that up to date. So those are just some screenshots. Next. And we're also keeping up with our graduates. So our class of 2020, we started this week filming every graduate. outside every 5 minutes. So I froze today because I got the shady spot today, but it's well worth it. They are so excited. And I had a personal talk with every single graduate. We did 80 on Monday and we did 115 today. We have 118 scheduled tomorrow, and then we have 61 in St. Michael's on Thursday and Friday, and then makeups on Monday. So we are filming that. We're going to put it all together, and we're going to have a virtual graduation shown on the night of graduation, June 1st for St. Michael's and June 2nd for Easton High. And we're real excited. We're going to have a Facebook party graduation, but we're also going to work with our Avalon to get it shown to the community. So we're very excited about that. Also on Facebook and on our website, we're showing where our students are going and where they're being accepted to college. And this is just a sampling of some of our students and where they're going. So we're keeping up with our students that are graduating this year as well. The next slide. Some people have asked me if we've relaxed the graduation requirements due to COVID-19. And the answer to that is we have in a couple areas. We did have a couple seniors that did not quite get to the 75 hours, and Maryland State Department of Education did waive those last hours that they might not have gotten due to COVID-19. They also waived their state assessments. They still need to pass their courses for graduation requirement, but because they aren't able to take the state assessments this spring, they're not going to have to take the retest and do that if they needed to do so to graduate. We actually require, Talbot County requires 1 more credit than the state, and we are keeping that in place. All of our students are going to be able to obtain all of their credits to be able to graduate. So we are not going to be changing anything as far as credit count. We are making them be held accountable for the credits, and we are supporting them by making sure we're reaching out to them to see what we need to do to help them. So that's for graduation. Next slide. So technology and internet access. Right now, we have 96.5% of our students with a device. The reason it's not 100% is because we don't have them out there for pre-K. So pre-K, we're working with packets, where we do not have enough devices to have a one-to-one including pre-K. So that's why that's at 96.5. We have distributed our iPads to our elementary students and MacBook Airs to our secondary students. So they do have the devices. We have 85% of our students are connected and have connectivity. What we're doing now is looking at that 15%. Why are they not connected, or why are they not able to connect? And there's 2 reasons. One reason might be socioeconomic status. They're not able to afford it, even though it's in their area. The second reason might be that they live in a region in the county where there is no connectivity. So what we're trying to do is nail down exactly which students need what, and we're working with our community partners. So if you go to the next slide, I believe that takes us to our community partners. We have partnered with, we wrote a grant with Talbot Family Network to get 100 hotspots to pay for 3 months of hotspot service. So that's going to help some of our families that might be in an area where they have connectivity, but they may not be able to afford it. So we're getting those hotspots out. Actually, we got out all 100, and we've ordered 75 more because we have that need right now. So we're going to get those out hopefully in the coming weeks. This is Jeannie down here, and that's Curtis. And we take inventory all of them and get them out. They have to sign an agreement that they do belong to the school system, and they'll get those back in 3 months, or we'll figure out how we're going to do that. But we have had agreements. And the next slide shows how we've been working with our community partners. So we've been working with our community partners. We have beefed up, I guess that's probably not the right word, but it sounds good. We've beefed up the internet service at each one of our schools, so they kind of come out into the parking lots, or so people can pull up to the school parking lot, like I did this morning at 7 o'clock at Easton High School. Sat in my car right outside of Easton High, and I was doing a Zoom call this morning before we started graduation practice. And there's other families that are doing that. Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum has been amazing. They're letting our students pull into their parking lot and be able to access and download their assignments or upload their assignments in the parking lot. We also have Easton Utilities. They've been amazing. They've set up some hot spots around the county, and they've also put some hot spots in a couple of our key neighborhoods that we know we have quite a few students that might just need that hot spot to upload their assignments and download their assignments. My goal by the end of June is to figure out a way to get everybody connected so that we can make sure that we're gonna really go online and do distance learning if we need to through the summer, as opposed to mail-in packets. That is probably the best thing we can do right now.
Kelly, this slide and the previous slide, when we talk about hotspots, the previous slide, those 100 hotspots, are those like boosters for the home?
They're for the cell phone.
They enhance the signal from your home.
That's correct. And they go through your cell phone, and then that service is paid for through Talbot Family Network for 3 months. That was the grant that we wrote to get that service. And these hotspots are a community where somebody can pull up and actually download. So we are working with that. Where I could use your help as a county council, we have found that the tower in Tillman there is a tower in Tillman, and there's a tower, I believe, in Bosman or Nevitt, and neither one is hooked up. And we've been trying to get a hold of Verizon to figure out a way why that's not hooked up or what it might take to hook up those two towers, because that would help us tremendously. Down in the Bay 100 area, the connectivity is spotty, will be a good word I will use, where some kids can get connections sometimes, but it's not all the time. Therefore, if they're on a call, they get frozen or they get kicked out. So that's an area that I could use some help with, is if we already have towers in place, let's get them working. That would be really helpful. And the second is really to revisit the moratorium to see if there's any way we might be able to get some grants, especially today in this world that we're living in, to maybe see if we can add a tower. I know at one time we talked about putting one at the St. Michael's, one of the stadium lights, you know, kind of make it so it's not really standing out. But that might be something that would be helpful for us. So that's one area that I know that would really help us out a lot, is getting the connectivity.
I thought the Tillman Allen, that's a camouflage tower. I thought that tower did have service on it, but what's it do?
No service, and we've been trying to work with Verizon. Verizon is the contact on that. And actually, Mr. Wilson went down there and really checked it out for me before I came today, because I wanted to make sure I was giving you the correct information. So, he had no bars underneath, so it's not working. So that would be helpful. That would be helpful. So I wanted to give you an update on connectivity, and the next slide is an update on our meals. And I want you to know that we started right away. We have Seduxo as our food service provider. They have been amazing. They have 8 frontline employees that make all of this food, get it all together. They actually come in on Sunday and Monday and prepare the meals for Tuesday that go out, and then they come in on Wednesday and Thursday and prepare the meals for Friday's pickup. So we do Tuesdays and Fridays, and when the students pick up their meals, they're picking up 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and a snack each day. And we've actually increased that number. This was as of, I believe, a couple of weeks ago. But we're actually now up to about 900 students for each pickup at this time, and about almost 400 care packs are going home on Fridays. So I really want to give a huge shout out to Seduxo and also to Megan Cook and Emily Moody. They have been amazing with care packs and also managing our volunteers. As you can see, we have 692 volunteers, and those are all community members that have helped us through this whole pandemic and continue to do so. So we have seen that increase over time, and we knew that was going to happen. We also deliver meals to homes that might not be able to get to any of our pickup sites. And our pickup sites are all of our schools, except for Easton High, and then we also deliver when we need to deliver the meals. So I just wanted you to know that.
2 quick questions. One, is it meals just for the student, or is there a family included?
No, these are just for the students, and we get reimbursed for these meals through the federal government.
That was my
And-
second question.
yes.
This is the CARES Act, right?
Yes,
Okay.
and so we get reimbursed for the meals. And the next slide. I also wanted to share with you that we had a little bit of a time where food was a little scarce there for a little while, and we reached right out to our own community, and look at all of our community businesses that stepped up to the plate and helped us out. Doug Kirby, he was great. He went ahead and took his Sodexo order for Washington Street Pub, and he packaged all the spaghetti sauce in containers and the spaghetti, and he was great. So we really relied on a lot of our community partners as well in getting food to our children. So I wanted to thank them as well tonight. Next slide. This is just a picture of at the Talbot County Business Center. Is that right, Mr. Pack?
That is correct.
That's it, that's it. This is where we go on Friday mornings and we pack everything up. They actually do it on Thursdays. They pack the care packs, and then Fridays we get them out to all of the people to deliver. So I wanted to share that with you. It's been great. The next slide. So this one here, what I wanted to share with you is we wanted to do a twist on staff appreciation. So last weekend, we went out and we took this sign to every single teacher. All 362 teachers received a sign in their yard from the leadership team. So what we did was we divided and conquered, and we all divided up. We each took about 18 or 19 teachers. We did it regionally. And we went out, we knocked on the door, we had celebration playing, and made a good time out of it. And we put the sign in their yard, and we told them, thank you for being a teaching rock star. And I think they really felt appreciated.
I have two of my name tags.
There you go. So, and we're going to be doing the same thing to our support staff next week. And then at the end of next week, we're going to announce the Teacher of the Year and the Support Staff of the Year on Friday, the 22nd at noon. So we're really trying to keep everybody's spirits up during this time, because I've been on a couple Zoom calls, and when you have teachers that have an infant and a toddler, and they're also trying to teach, that's a tough job. So we need to make sure their spirits are kept up too. So we really appreciate them. And Ms. Price, the next one you can just skip, because it's just a video I was going to show you, but that's fine. You can skip that. That was me on Sunday delivering. I had my Love Public Education shirt on. And we danced in front of houses. Yes. They really appreciated it. They really did. And last but not least, you didn't ask, but I thought I'd throw this in there, Mr. Pack. So here's where we are with Easton Elementary School project. I wanted you to kind of see a timeline, because I think it's important to know that we are definitely on time. I think we're actually a little bit of ahead, because we got Moden moved in, and Moden is all clean and ready to go. We're just waiting for teachers to come in and unpack, which we will do once we're able to do so. Starting this week, we've had a couple teachers come into Dobson each day. It's around the teachers pack up their room, but we're only letting a couple in just to pack up, so that we can move those over so that they can stay on schedule when it comes to the Easton Elementary School project. So we'll begin moving the Dobson building, and it will be complete by June 5th. And the target date for completion of Moden will be June 5th. And then what we're going to do, the target date for completion of Dobson demolition will be July 24th. And the target date for completion of all the site work is August 14th. So we will continue to update you on that progress. But it has been amazing, great work. And I really thank all of the teachers over there and all of the staff, because they have really been just terrific sports through all of this, because I know it's been a little tough without a playground for 2 years. So it's been tough, but it's a beautiful building, and we're really looking forward to have a grand opening. So hopefully we'll be able to get that planned. So the next couple slides, Mrs. Price, are just some pictures. The new hallway, I wanted you to see of Moden building. And this is the music room. And the gym. And you can see the breezeway where they have the tiles and the cafeteria. It's very colorful. The restrooms are so nice and shiny.
For now.
For now. And this is kind of a before and after kind of a picture. So this is kind of where a playground used to be, and now we have a new one in the new building, which I thought was a good picture to show.
Now, pause it. The fencing that runs along the bypass, is that being replaced?
I believe that is in there for when they finish.
Well, that's coming up.
Yeah. And now that the playground is up, no one's asking if that's the entrance anymore, so I'm very happy. I'm very happy now. So now they realize that's not going to be an entrance anymore.
The big sign that said construction vehicles only didn't pull them in, right?
That's right, that's right. So it's all on schedule, and, you know, we're real excited about that. And so what we're going to be working on next, and I knew you probably want to know, is we just got this draft of, and mine is all written up and all over, but this is our draft. It's called the Maryland Together Recovery Plan. So we are working as a team right now, because we just got this past week, working on a recovery plan. What I want to do is give you some good news, though. Our continuity of learning plan was due to MSDE last week, and Talbot County had one of the highest ratings in the state. There were 36 areas, and we only had one developing, so we were very proud of our continuity of learning plan. I want to thank Dr. Helga Einhorn. She worked with on that plan with a team of people and did amazing work. So now we're coming up with our recovery plan that looks like this. What we would like to do is have this recovery plan for education dovetail into the governor's roadmap, so that they dovetail, so that parents can actually see how they mesh. So schools are included in that road to recovery that the governor has put out. So what we're working on is what would schools look like in phase 1? What would schools look like in stage? I shouldn't say stage. They started with phases, but now they're stages. In stage 2, and what would schools look like in stage 3? So we're working on that plan right now. We're also working on the different pots of money. So we're working on the CARES Act that you would ask about, because we know we have a little more time for some of that maybe to be spent in opening school in the fall, and some things we might need to do in the summer as well. We're also looking at some grant opportunities that we might have, trying to make sure we're looking at our school safety grants, to see if there's any other things that we can get through the school safety grants. And those will all be included in our stage plans that we're going to be putting out. We were waiting to hear, you have to remember, just Friday it was announced that schools were closed. And so that kind of started the wheels rolling. We weren't sure if schools were going to be closed or if they were going to open up in phases. So that's where we are now, and once those plans get developed, we'll be rolling those out. And we are going to be working with our parents and our community, because schools may look different at different stages. School opportunities or educational opportunities may look different at different stages. And just to give you an example, when we get to stage 2 in the governor's roadmap, that means we can actually work with students in small groups, and we can work with staff in small groups. Still with some masks and gloves and so things that we're going to be doing, but if we're able to bring some students in and do some interventions, or be able to get some students caught up with some of the prerequisite courses. For an example, if you're an Algebra 1 student and you might need a little brush up on that Algebra 1 to finish up before you go on to the next Algebra 2, we need to make sure we're paying attention to that, and we're getting those things in place. So we're working on a plan. We're also working on what the summer might look like, and if it remains virtual, how can we engage more of our students than we've ever engaged before? Because we have teachers that are willing to work with our students, and we want our students to be engaged as much as possible. So that's what we're working on right now.
Want to hit the lights behind you in this election?
And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions of Dr. Griffith on her presentation? What has been done thus far is absolutely amazing in my opinion. Getting that many laptops out and getting them to the students' hand, and then getting the continuing education piece of it up and running, because no one knew exactly a couple of months ago what that looked like, and you guys are kind of building this airplane in mid-flight. So I think you've been very successful in doing that. Your feeding operation, of course, which was a huge part of the EOC effort, and figuring out how we're going to feed these students. A lot of them desperately depend on that school meal. So that was a tremendous success in my opinion. And it's something that I see we're gonna have to probably do through the rest of the summer.
We are going to continue it through
Yeah.
the summer,
Yeah.
and again, we started with 40 students that first week, and this
Yeah.
last Friday, we had 900.
Until these parents get back to work and is able to take some of that responsibility away, I really see us doing that for the rest of the summer. So, the students and when I did a walkthrough with Kevin a couple of weeks ago, 'cause I missed the first tour with the
Right.
council. I was out. Number one, the school looks great, and when they say it's the largest elementary school in the state, walking it, you really feel it. And we walked the entire building together. The Dobson building, the classrooms had not been emptied out because we hadn't got the notice yet whether schools were going to close. What about any belongings that the students left behind? I'm assuming that.
We're working on that. We have a plan for that. So right now, what we're doing is we are actually gathering anything that the student has, and each student has a bag. It's a poke-proof bag with their name on it and their grade level and the teacher. And we're getting out their materials so that when we do either have to have them come in to update their iPad or laptop or whatever they're gonna have to do, we're gonna have a date where they can come by and pick it up. I will do definitely a better job of pickup of belongings than I did with iPads. We realized that when we did iPad distribution, everybody came at the right one time. So we will definitely space that out by families, but we are gathering all of the students' belongings, getting them into a container for pickup. And we're doing the same thing with lockers at the secondary level.
Didn't they already have their electronic device? We already have a one-to-one, so why was it such a big pickup?
None of the elementary students took their iPads home. So they all had to come pick up. No, we didn't have any elementary students take them home. So we did have to have them all come pick them up. But we have a plan in place for that, and we're working on that plan.
As a father, 2 elementary school kids, I'm glad that they don't bring those home. I have just 2 questions. One, the building's being closed. Who did that? Is that us, or the Board of Ed, or the State Board of Ed closing the schools?
That was the state health department. The state health department is the state health department can close schools because of health reason and open schools because of health reason. Now, obviously, they consult with the state superintendent. That's the way I see it. So we were told when schools were closed those first 2 weeks and no one was to go in the building, we were told that came from Dr. Salmon, but also on the recommendation of the health department, the state health department.
Okay. And secondly, the dropout rate. Have you noticed any change moving to this kind of education platform? Has it helped some kids who might have been on the fence, or?
I don't know yet. I really don't. We have noticed just in the past 2 weeks, we had a couple kids that were homeless, obviously, and we've noticed in the past 2 weeks, we've had about 15 students that we haven't been able to connect with in the past 2 weeks. And so Joe Gamble and Greg Wright and Tony Smith, they're awesome, and they'll help us do a wellness check just to kind of see if we think they moved. So we're trying to figure that out. But 15 out of 4,700 is not bad. But as of right now, we haven't had a real big change. You have to remember a lot of our students that are working on graduation, a lot of them are already working online for credit recovery, if they were on the fence anyway. Tina Morris is our dropout re-engagement coordinator. She's paid for through the Talk Family Network. She has still been contacting all of her students that are on her caseload, and they are all working.
Nice.
Yes. So we're hoping. We're hoping that doesn't make a difference. I know I made sure I told them all today, we're doing this little graduation little photo op here, but you're not done until you finish all the requirements. So there wasn't actually a diploma in the cover. They have to earn that, and then they'll pick those up when they turn in their laptop when we get ready to get towards graduation.
Good.
Yeah. So they know.
And for those vocational CET students, hands-on, auto mechanics, and those students, how are we dealing with them? And is there a final project that they have to put an engine together, or how are we dealing with those CET students?
Yeah, the only one that needed a waiver from MSDE was cosmetology, and they went ahead and did give a waiver for them because they had to have certain many hours.
Right.
And it's not a waiver for them just to get certified. It's a waiver for them to be able to do it a little later when things open up. So it's not like, you know, they don't have to do it.
They're not done.
Right.
Okay.
The other CTEs, they're actually doing more things online and virtually. There's a lot of things you can do online that's pretty amazing. And Brian Willey is very close with NATEP, which is the auto mechanic thing, and so they've been working with them to get those students certified. So once we open up some things, they'll be able to finish up.
Good.
Cooking should be good though. I hope they're cooking for their families.
That's right, that's right.
Is that part of the assignment?
Absolutely, absolutely, and they're showing and they're filming themselves, making things at home. Absolutely, we're doing that.
I think
Absolutely.
one of the last events that the home ec CET group did was the volunteer fire, not volunteer fire, the Farm Bureau.
Yes,
Yeah.
the Farm Bureau was the last thing that we did. That's right, because Cinderella was next and it got canceled.
That's right.
I still feel terrible about that, yeah.
So,
So there are a lot of disappointments, but I keep telling the kids, you know, these kids were born during 9/11.
right, yeah.
And here they are again. They're going to be more resilient after all of this. I'm sure they're going to make a lot of change in the world. They
Couldn't
really
they have done
will.
Zoom Cinderella? Couldn't they have all done their parts and recorded it?
A soundtrack.
I don't know. That would be nice. I just felt really bad because I know it's big. It's this, especially when you work that hard.
I know.
Yeah. I tell you, the kids have been great when we've been filming graduation. They're really upbeat. They were very excited. They said, you know what, Dr. Griffith, this is the first time, probably the only time my family's going to get front row seats. And you know, and they're out there and they have balloons and they decorate the car. And so we're really trying to make it special
Good.
because the kids really deserve it. They
So you
really
said that June 1 is one of the virtual graduation? Is
June
that,
1st at 5 is St. Michael's, and
St.
June 2nd at 6 is Easton High.
so will we be able to log on this?
Absolutely, we're gonna send you out
We'll
an
send you out to-
invite,
okay.
and we're gonna try to get everybody in the community to watch, because I think you're gonna be really excited to see. A lot of really neat things are gonna happen in that video.
Yeah, Cliff Kupersmith up at Chesapeake College asked me to do a little piece for their graduation last week, and I sent it up to them, so.
I did too,
Yeah,
yeah.
I want to say congratulations to those students as well from Chesapeake College.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Oh, I forgot.
that's good, good.
Call me if you need anything,
All right.
or if you have a question.
Not a question, but Dr. Griffith, just thanks for this presentation, because again, as a parent of two students, I've had kind of the micro view of what the schools are doing and been impressed with the support that their teachers have been giving. But the system-wide, the effort that you've done to bridge the technology gap, to do the feeding, is just really impressive. And I can say again from my micro view that even before you were getting to a regular scheme of virtual learning, I can tell you that there were some high school students that were engaged. I think that the AP government class, and they took their exam yesterday.
Yes,
I don't think they missed a day, or if they missed a day, it was only one. But they knew that day that exam would not move, and that they could not miss time.
And Mr.
they
Coombs
really
is a
kept up with
driver.
it. They really kept up with it.
thank you very much, and so is Dan Smith, they're great, they're really good guys. But yeah, AP testing is this week, so we're having to work our graduation schedule around our AP testing. We have some students taking 4 and 5 AP exams this week. So the students are really working hard, and I'm really proud.
Somebody said one of their kids was doing band practice at home.
That was Pete.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. That was Pete, yeah.
God bless you.
Scholarship and Awards Night. That's huge in St. Michael's. I'd love to see if we could get that published in the Star Democrat, the names of the kids and the awards. It's huge for the community.
It is, and we're working on that right now. As a matter of fact, we are working on that because we do need to make sure that that's also special. Easton does a senior night with awards separate, whereas St. Michael's does it as part of the graduation. So we're gonna see if we can fit it into that video for the St. Michael's one. If not, we're gonna create a separate one. So we're working on that, because it is really important. It is really important. So we're really trying to take any event that's out there and still do it. We're working on something for our retirees. We're working on, trying to just continue to do what we do, but just in a different way. But it's really important to keep everybody's spirit up, because it can get really depressing sometimes. And I'll be honest with you, I've been doing this 38 years. It's exhausting, working virtually and keeping up with it all. But I can tell you, it's been really exciting too, because everyone has such great ideas. So you have to work as a team, and you have to work collaboratively to make it work. So thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. And if you could give me some support for the connectivity, that would be awesome.
We're gonna look into that, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And if you think of anything else, please try to watch the video, because it's a good video on continuity of learning. And if you think of any other questions, just let me know. You know where to find me.
Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for all that you and your staff have done. This is definitely an unprecedented time we're living in right now, to have a complete shutdown of our school system. This is bigger than the snowstorm. It's bigger than the riots we saw a few years back in Baltimore City. And for you all to just hunker down and get the job done. I just want to say thank you very much, and send it out to all your staff. We really appreciate it.
Will do. You guys have a good night. Thank
One
you.
thing that this will do, there'll be no more snow days. Now that we're all connected and they know how to do this,
That's right.
they can do things now with their iPads.
Well, and I'm
That's
hoping
great.
that they take that into consideration.
Yeah.
So I think that would actually be awesome. I really do.
Help
I
us
agree.
with the calendar a
Yeah.
lot.
Thank you all very much. Have a good night.
You too.
Uh-huh.
A great update, and a lot going on still in Talbot County Public Schools. A lot still happening. Look forward to getting those connections for the June 1st and June 2nd virtual graduations. Council, next on your agenda, you're going to hear an update on the county repurposing facility. We have with us Mr. Warren Edwards, our road superintendent. And Warren, I'll turn it over to you.
So, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is we started the accepting material from the demolition of the first school, and it got moved up to the last week of March, and they started bringing in material, and then with the COVID-19 thing, they had to do practice social distancing. They cut their hours back to 4 days a week. When it was bad weather, they couldn't demo, so it really slowed it down the first 4 or 5 weeks. There were days we didn't even receive material. Unfortunately, we had the machines there to do the work. We couldn't do anything about the fact that we didn't have material to process. So I talked to the contractor, Mid-Atlantic Equipment, who we're leasing from, and the original lease was for 5 weeks for $20,020. And they agreed to cut that in half. So the first original lease, we're only going to pay $11,010. So that helped us a lot on that part of it. We're getting better. We're almost halfway through the first school as far as demolition and receiving material. It was a trial and error, because we didn't know what kind of material we were going to receive and how good it would be, how contaminated it would be as far as insulation and roof material and metals and that kind of thing, the wear and tear on the machines and all that, and the maintenance that would be required. So we've been taught a few good lessons while we're doing this in the last 5 or 6 weeks. It looks like we're going to probably run into, at the minimum, the first week of August to get both schools in. And if COVID-19 slows us down again, that can slow them down. They're back to working 5 days a week, and they're bringing material in 5 days a week. I negotiated with Mid-Atlantic Equipment, and one of the reasons that I'm here tonight is I negotiated with them to let us keep the stacker and crusher until August the 1st. And the original quote was like $78,000 and some dollars. I got them down to $60,000 until August 1st. We have in our budget about $42,000 that we can allocate towards this, left over, because we come under on our milling and we come under on our tar and chip. So with your approval, I can use those monies to pay the first $42,000, and that would include the 11. So that would leave a balance of 18,000 that would be paid after they started paying us for the materials they received after July 1st, because they're gonna buy back up to 5,000 tons from us, ADEL Construction, to build the parking lot for the schools, of material we've processed already. So, I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but if you take the 5,000 tons at a minimum of $12 a ton, that's $60,000. Right now, it's costing us between $650 and $850 a ton to crush the material. So that's a profit, a worst case scenario of $18,000. Could be as much as $28,000, depending on timing and the material that's coming in. They're getting ready to start the second story. It's unknown to everybody what's in that middle floor. So that could be steel beam, it could be, you could slow it down for a week or two, it may not, we just don't know. We still can take care of it, we still can process it. I met today with a metal scrapping company that is going to give us a quote in the next couple of days to come in and buy the metal back from us that we're taking out. We're averaging a dump truck or two a day of scrap metal just out of the concrete that we're crushing. So we have to separate all that stuff. And the contractor that we're working with from the ADEL Construction is also sending people to our facility to help separate it. So it's all being practiced, safe distancing, it's all safety requirements, hard hats, et cetera, glasses, safety stuff. But what I'm getting at is they're helping us process this material because it's taking more labor than we thought it would to get it done. But we're still making very good money doing what we're doing. And the approximate, this is an approximate because I don't know and they don't know, their estimate is 15,000 to 18,000 tons of material coming to us from the two schools. It could be 12,000, it could be 20,000 tons. We just don't know. Right now, we're probably, well, right now, from the schools, we are 1,398 tons today that we've hauled in there and crushed. You lose about a third of that when you crush the material. It's a breakdown. So if you were hauling average right now, they're averaging 15 to 19 tons a truck. And when you break that down, you're getting, if it's a 15-ton load, you're getting probably about 9 to 10 tons of processed material. Because you're taking out the metal and you're breaking down large material to the size of your finger. So, what I'm asking you, and one of the reasons I'm here is, can we use the money that I have left over from the, some of the money that I have left over from the existing budget for township, and a little bit of the money from what we have left over from the milling that we didn't use. So it'd be like 42,000 of this budget towards this $60,000 increase until August 1st. And then when we start billing them, and I believe Angela is not in here, but I believe she said after July 1st, we'd be able to bill them. The ADEL company is buying material back from us. And then we could use the money to bill them to pay the balance of what we need to finish out the summer across the schools. We may get done August the 1st. It could extend a couple of weeks or a month, I don't know. It's all depending on COVID-19, depending on the contractor, you know.
How's the arrangement going with Vulcan as far as weighing of the trucks?
It's going really well. It's a little expensive. Originally, we had agreed with them to do one, so if we had 5 trucks, we'd weigh each truck first thing in the morning, and then do an average of the loads. If they did 10 loads that day, so we would have to weigh each truck. Now they want every truck weighed, so that's costing us $20 a load, which is more than I wanted to spend per load, but
Who
it's at
wants
least
to
an
weigh?
active ticket.
Who's asking to have them weighed?
The ADEL needs them for, I guess, I believe, MDE for recycling purposes. To show
So maybe
the
they
tonnage.
should pay the additional $20 a load rather than us.
Since
they changed, I mean, you had an agreement that you would cost average and now
Well,
they
it was
changed
a
that.
verbal agreement, and I tried it yesterday. I did get him to go from 12 hours a ton to $13 a ton. And I did get labor from them to help sort this material out. So I beat up on him pretty good yesterday. Literally to the point that I was going to just say, take it somewhere else. But I was pretty hard on them, and they were receptive to work with us. Because it's a great location, and it's worked out good for them, and for us. It could work out You figure if they buy back 5,000 tons, and if our numbers are right, that they give us, you're gonna have 10 or 12,000 tons of material finished, processed, and ready to sell.
You're saying if they buy back 5,000, are they not?
Well, we don't know how much they're gonna buy back. They're saying up to 5,000
What if
tons.
they don't buy back any?
I want permission to sell. That's another reason why I'm here tonight. I have a list of
I thought we
contractors.
had an agreement that they were absolutely buying back a minimum amount of tonnage.
We have in writing that their intention is to buy back 5,000.
Right, in writing and intention are two different things. So either they are or they aren't.
Well, they're saying they are, Laura, but I don't know this one, so. They're saying they are, in their intention, but things can change, I don't know.
So the agreement as it stands right now is for them to buy back a minimum of 5,000 tons of
Yes.
material for you to
That's
sell.
what it would take.
At
to keep
13.
our lot.
No, he just said intention.
Well, is there a written agreement or a verbal agreement?
There's a written, I don't know if it's in the contract.
We prepared a
We did a
written
contract.
agreement
There's a written
that we
agreement.
sent over to you guys, and I thought those were executed, but do you know?
They were signed, so I guess that would stand as a contract.
So that's a written
I just don't
agreement.
have it in front of me, so I didn't want to say, yes, it's a contract.
We have a written agreement from the purchase at least 5,000 tons back at $13.
It was at 12, and I got them up to
The first one
13,
to 13.
yes.
The word
And-
intention scared me, like you don't.
Well, I wish they would buy it all back, because I could sell it on the street for $17 or $18 a ton. It's gorgeous material. And I have 15 contractors right now in Talbot County that are begging to buy it. And
So-
the tonnage we have, revenue right now would be about $155,000 in material we have ready to sell.
Let's go through your first ask first, so we can do first things first. You want to retain the stacker and crusher through August the 1st, so you can continue processing the materials from the Moulton and Dobson School. To extend this contract, it's going to cost you $60K. You have,
For the leasing contract,
For the
yes,
leasing.
we still have to continue our maintenance and blow bar replacements and that kind of stuff, yes.
but so to extend the contract through August the 1st,
Yes.
would be $60,000. You said you currently have $42,000 within your savings from your millings department, and also some additional money from another
For the township.
township. So that gives you $42,000 you have in hand, and the agreement is that they would purchase back this material from you to make up the $18,000 difference. Okay. All right. With that understanding, the chair will be open to that. Is there a motion to allow the extension of this contract?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Price,
Second.
second by Mr. Lesher. Any further discussion on the extension of the contract, what we're doing here? Okay. Madam Secretary, would you please call your roll?
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. Devilio,
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Rush?
Aye.
So that's for the stacker and the crusher. Second that.
And to kind of put everybody at ease a little bit, we're basically doing what some of the contractors that were against this in the beginning were asking us to do. We're recycling the materials as we have them, leasing equipment to do it, so we're
That's
kind of
okay.
stepping back, showing what we can produce and following that guideline, so I think it's a good thing. The other thing that I'm here tonight to ask for is permission to sell to the local contractors that want to buy it now. And the products that we have for sale that are ready to go. And that will
Prior to
produce,
July 1? Prior to,
well, we can wait till July 1 if that's what we need to do.
Why would we need to wait?
well, I'm just asking a question. We don't, I'm just wondering, we don't have the enterprise fund set up yet
Correct.
with Mrs., I think Ms. O'Donnell was working on that language.
Do we have to have
So I mean-
enterprise funds set up to just resell it? Can't it just be through the roads department?
Mr. Kupersmith, I'm turning it over to you. Do we need to have our enterprise fund set up in order to sell this now? Or how do we
Well,
proceed?
there are a couple of issues. One issue is the zoning issue. Are we following our zoning, and are we zoned to have sales at that facility?
So Ms.
We do have a
Brady can answer that
we have a
one.
temporary use certificate, and I don't know if it extends to sales, or is it just the processing?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, the first issue is,
Try
I
to bring
think,
the microphone
is
closer
a
to
zoning
you.
issue. Sorry, the first issue is a zoning issue, so we have a temporary use certificate out there that Mary Kay issued. That includes processing, but does it also include sales? So that's a question. I don't know the answer to it.
Okay, that's a good question. That's
Mary
number
Kay
one.
could tell us. So that's one issue, and then in terms of the enterprise fund, that is really, as I understand it, an accounting
Right.
method. That's kind of a back office issue for us. Is this an operation that is going to have general funds, or is it going to be a self-sufficient operation? And the whole plan, I know, has been for it to be a self-sufficient operation.
Correct.
We had wanted to do some legislation that clarified that this facility would operate that way. So that can certainly be prepared, just to clarify that that's how this facility would work. I don't know that that is necessary to authorize a sale from there, though. That would just mean that if a sale was made, the money would be rolled back in to that facility so that it would be self-sufficient. Clarify where the money would go. In the absence of that, I mean, and Angela may have the independent authority to be able to set that up, but we had recommended legislation just to clarify that that's how that would work.
She can set up a separate account for a short term.
Right, okay.
Well, and that was when we were gonna like be buying all of the equipment and having it operate as a true enterprise thing, but right now we're kind of on a temporary basis, so hopefully we can figure out a way to make this work.
So I guess the first question is from Ms. Verdery to see if you can do retail sale or wholesale of material from the site. So we need to get an opinion from our planning officer on that, the zone for that particular use. So I guess we really can't answer your question tonight until we hear back from Ms. Verdery. I agree with Mrs. Price that if we can go ahead and do if the zoning permits, and we can go ahead and do the sale in current year, if we have buyer trade to buy, we can always go back and do the legislation for the enterprise fund at a later date. And I guess it just would be an accounting process for Ms. Lane to just put that sale into a line item for the repurposing center. But I think the first question, find out from Mary Kay what we can do.
I mean, other county departments have revenue line items and
Sure, yeah.
permits and inspections does.
Absolutely. So it's just an accounting process. So I think we got to wait for Mary Kay.
Yes.
We got to wait for Mary Kay. I'm sorry, we can't answer the question tonight.
I'll talk to her tomorrow.
Okay.
So, Mr. Beck, just for the record, so in the permit issued by Mary Kay Verdery, the use certificate, it says, your application for a use certificate is to conduct activities associated with compounding concrete and asphalt from major public road or facility construction projects into CR8, number 2 stone ducts and asphalt milling for the exclusive use of Talbot County government. So we definitely need a clarification from Ms. Verdery as to whether that includes sales or not.
But aren't we selling back to the schools, so is that, we gotta make sure that's covered as well, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, there are two different types of sales, I think. So we have arranged that sort of a sale, but that's a specific contract with one particular person. As I understand it, you're thinking about kind of opening the doors so that somebody who's not necessarily scheduled could come, right?
Just contractors.
Yeah,
yes.
right. But it wouldn't be, you're not going to have an individual contract with each one like we do with ADEL, right?
Ms. Verdery is texting me that says the use agreement does not mention sales. But we'll have that conversation with her tomorrow.
Okay.
So you make a good point. I think we can distinguish the ADEL situation, but we should look into it for the contractors in general.
To answer your question, there would be at times large volume sales. So there could be contractors like the Catholic School Duval Brothers. Had we been available, we would have blown that out of water. I mean, they would have definitely bought that material from us. And that would have
So maybe
Well, I
all
think
we
that-
do is write 1 or 2 contracts.
I think you and Mr. Hollis and Ms. Verdery need to have a conversation tomorrow with the Office of Law, figure out how we can get the language straight. One thing Ms. Kupersmith brought up as a side note due to, I mean, should everything go accordingly, I would hope that these purchases are scheduled purchases and not people just showing up under the situation we're in right now with COVID. This is a completely side issue, but if we can get this hurdle covered, I would hope that those, what I would request, that those purchases be done by schedule only, and not people just showing up. Okay.
Well, that
I
would
mean,
probably
it's a side issue. We
Yeah.
don't need to bat it around.
Okay.
Mr. House will take care of that with you, but it's a side issue. Okay. All right. Any, you have another item, or is that it?
No,
That was
that's
it?
it.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Council, next on your agenda is Mr. Kupersmith's presentation of the annexation of a portion of Dutchmans Lane into the town of Easton. You've been waiting for this for quite some time, so Tony, I'll turn it over to you.
I'm very excited about this.
I am too.
Thank you, President Pack. So the staff is requesting council's consideration and approval of this petition for annexation. And the town has asked that we submit the fully executed petition by May 20th, which is the deadline for them to get it in their June 1st meeting so that they could process this and then introduce the necessary legislation June 1st. So the annexation involves bringing Dutchmans Lane into the town boundaries, not the entire length from Route 50 all the way down to where it intersects with, there's another road that it intersects with that I can't remember the name of, but this is just a section that goes from Route 50 to Easton Club East, basically. That would all come into the town. So the purpose of that, of course, is to allow us to then transfer the road to the town of Easton, ownership of the road. And as a part of doing the annexation of Dutchmans Lane, we also have to annex the Covington property, which is less than 2 acres. It's right off of Dutchmans Lane, close to the intersection with Route 50. It has a single-family residence on it. There are 2 folks, a husband and a wife, that live there. And so Mr. Covington and the 2 tenants will also, we have also asked to sign the petition. So as part of the annexation law, there's a requirement that a certain percentage of the ownership of all the assessed value that's going to be annexed, and then a certain percentage of the registered voters that are living in the annexed area must also sign. So we're asking those 2 parties to sign as well, this petition. If the Covington property were not included, we would then have an enclave situation where that would be a small island of unincorporated county land surrounded on 3 sides by municipal land. So to avoid that, we have to bring their property in as well as a part of this.
What if they didn't sign it?
We can talk through that. If we get to that stage, we're hoping that we don't get to that stage. And I would probably have some legal advice about how to handle that. But
There have been considerable conversations with Mr. Covington
yes,
to build up for this.
exactly. And I reached out this afternoon by email to the Wilsons, who are the tenants there. And so we are trying to get this on schedule for this petition to be fully executed by May 20th to get it in the town's packet for their June 1st meeting. So that's the current proposal. There is also a de-annexation piece of this, which also relates to enclaves. That's the 3rd Street element. So again, in order to avoid an enclave, if we bring Dutchmans Lane, if the town brings Dutchmans Lane and the Covington property into the town, they have to de-annex 3rd Street, or else that would create an enclave. So lots of enclaves, lots of shifting things around just to avoid that situation. But we believe that this petition that has been circulated to you all, and the exhibits, the plats, and the legal descriptions represent the whole transaction. There will be legislation by the town, an annexation resolution, as well as some other pieces of legislation related to this to implement this. And then there will be several pieces of county-related legislation to move the whole transaction ahead. So we would anticipate that the town would introduce their legislation on June 1st, and that we would possibly introduce our legislation on June 9th, I believe it is.
So we realize this isn't new, we actually have gotten to this point in council's direction, so hopefully you're still supportive of the effort.
Yeah, move steadily ahead. Third Street would just be abandoned then, once it's de-annexed by the town of Easton. We have no use for that roadway, so I'm assuming they would just abandon the property.
Yeah, they indicated that they're going to explore that, and so just to clarify though, that, and they would have to go through a process to do that, that would presumably involve notice to the adjoining property owners saying, this is a public road, we intend to close the road, not meaning to prevent access, but meaning to take it from a public road to a private road. So it's, just to be clear on that, the discussion is not to block that access point off, because there are properties that are behind it, and they access Route 50. They're not developed as far as we know, but they could be at some point. So that's the plan right now.
And it goes nowhere. Third Street can just dig ends to a wooded area, I believe.
There are 2 lots back there for sale, right?
Yeah, but as far as it being accessible to another adjoining subdivision, it just dead ends. So yeah.
And when those lots are developed back there, they would then have to come through the county process, planning and zoning office. It'd be reviewed by Public Works, and depending on the scale or the scope of what they're proposing, that road, Third Street, would probably have to be upgraded. It could then later on become a public road, depending on how many houses they put back there or whatever the development is. But for the time being, the proposal would be the county's not going to accept the road. It appears the town does not want to be the owner of the road, so then the road would go into private ownership at that point.
So you need direction from council tonight?
Yeah, to approve the petition for annexation for Dutchmans Lane, and to authorize the council president to sign the petition on behalf of the council.
Let's go with the, is that one motion or two as far as the Dutchman's Lane and then the petition? Just one?
Just one.
Okay. So, is there more?
I'll move to approve the petition.
Moved by Mr. Lester. Second by Mr. Callahan. Any further discussion? Callahan? Okay. Madam Secretary, please call your roll.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Rice?
Aye.
Mr. Lester?
Aye.
Thank you.
This close to getting Dutchman's Lane done. Okay, so next matter, I think Ms. Lane's going to come in. We're going to council consideration regarding the property tax referendum committee recommendations to council. We've seen this presentation from Ms. Lane, so I'm definitely not going to have her go through this again. We were given a list of options to consider. You have the slide in your graphics there.
Mr. Peck, Ms. Lane's outside if you need her.
Yeah, okay, she can step in wherever she feels free. And we can,
She should probably be in here.
yeah, we can go. What I'll just have her do is just, there's option A, B, and C. And just walk through the options of the recommendations of the committee. We're not going to have her go through this whole slide again. So as soon as she can step in, we'll do that. And hello, Ms. Lane. Ms. Lane, we have the recommendations from the Property Tax Referendum Committee in front of us. I know there were 3 options that they sent to council to consider. Certainly I don't want you to go through this whole slide presentation again. So if we could just start with slide number 9, which was the option A,
Right.
and if you could just maybe highlight as far as a recommendation from your committee, and thank you for chairing that committee, as far as those recommendations to council on option A.
Yeah, one of the recommendations to the Talbot County Council is that the current property tax cap needs to be changed, and that the ballot question needs to be simple and understandable. And one of the ways of achieving that, the recommendation was that we would actually recommend to the council that they put three separate ballot questions on the ballot, as opposed to one question that would deal with multiple items. So the first question would be a question that would deal with additional revenues. And under that question, one option would be to ask the voters to just eliminate the tax cap. Most governments don't have the constraints of a tax cap. So that was the first option, is let's just eliminate the property tax cap. Or possibly modify the tax cap to allow a 3% increase per year. Right now, we're allowed 2% or CPIU, whichever is less. So under this option, it would be to modify that annual percentage increase to 3% from 2%. Or a third revenue option was to allow the county council to add an additional cent to the property tax rate every year for the next 5 years. So the property tax rate would increase by 1 penny every year for 5 years. That would be a ballot question. And those all deal with generating additional revenues for county government.
Okay.
The next segment would be to eliminate the CPIU qualifier. Right now, we're allowed to increase our revenues by 2% or CPIU, whichever is less. The recommendation of the committee is to make this a totally separate question to eliminate the consumer price index urban qualifier as the lesser alternative cap. That language is confusing, and in the past 10 years, I think we had 6 where CPIU wasn't at 2%. When CPIU came in as part of the ballot question, CPIU was always 2%. You know, maybe it went down a little bit below 2%, but it wasn't really a consideration, and that's not the environment we're in right now. And then the third question would deal with the charter language clarification. The ballot question that we had, or what is in our charter, was not written by county staff. It was written by a citizens group who put it on the ballot. And the way it's written isn't how we actually set our tax rate. The way it's written, we would never be able to set a tax rate. So we want to have another question that just deals with the language of the charter, clarifying how we actually set the tax rate, and that's that we use the constant yield tax rate certification prepared by Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxation. So they're suggesting, the recommendation from the committee was 3 questions. First one dealing with revenues, second one dealing with CPIU, the third one dealing with the charter language. And then we had recommendations under the revenues.
Can we work these backwards?
Yeah,
Probably easiest
that was
to-
going to be my decision here, Ms. Lane, to go from the bottom up. Since it sounds like the third question is just a cleaning up of language. It doesn't mandate anything. It just to make the language match what we actually can do as far as our taxing authority. So that third question, I want to start there and work our way up to 2 and then into question number 1. So any discussion on putting the third question on the ballot to clear up our taxing authority? Any
What
discussion?
happens if it fails? Nothing?
Yes, I mean, we're still not complying with what's in the charter because we would never be able to set a tax rate in our budget. We won't, it could be challenged legally. We feel that if council puts this on the ballot and it fails, we put our citizens on notice that the charter language,
It's wrong.
yeah, the charter language isn't feasible. I mean, there's no way, we won't even know, the way it stands now, it's, you set your rate based on the properties on your tax rolls as of July 1. We don't keep our tax rolls, the state does. We don't know what that July 1 number is until September, October.
And here we are voting on a budget in May.
Right, and we have to do a budget by the end of May. So you just, and the intent was, I mean, quite frankly, this was put on by the Taxpayers Association. They understood exactly how we have been setting our tax rate since this ballot question went on, and have never had a problem with it because they understand that the constant yield certification is the only document we have that gives us any basis for setting our tax rate. That tells us what our base is as of July 1, the projection, and that's what we've always used. So they have never had an issue with it. And they understand that the question said this, but in reality, you can't do it that way.
Sure.
I mean, it's a simple cleanup, but it's probably the most confusing of language, but at least, I mean, I agree it would cover ourselves legally, hopefully, if someone were to ever challenge it. So I'd make a motion to go ahead and put that one on as a separate ballot question.
Motion made by Mrs. Price to put the correct language on as a ballot question.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Lester. This will probably require more explanation than any of the other two ballot questions, so people can understand it. We probably need to have Ms. Lane out on the forefront explaining this to people that this is a cleanup. It doesn't really change anything, but just to make sure that the language that is in the charter matches the authority that we have as far as setting a tax rate. So I don't see any harm in it. It's going to require a lot of work and effort to explain it to people, but I don't see any harm in it myself. So. Good. Okay, well, let's take the roll then.
Mr. Pratt?
Aye.
Mr. D'Auria?
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Lester?
All right.
Okay, so that one.
At this point, what we're doing is we're simply giving direction to the legal office to draw up
Yeah, they got
legislation.
to draft the language up according to the legalese spend on for the ballot question. Second, okay, let's go to question number 2, and the recommendation from the committee, and we certainly want to thank the committee for all their hard work, was to eliminate the consumer price index as a lesser alternative cap. This was something during those committee meetings, I think to a person, everyone said that the CPIU needs to go away. So there's never been something that was imposed upon a county of our size to begin with. The consumer price index urban was certainly not an urban area. Just a bad way to structure a tax revenue system by using that CPIU. So this was something I think unanimously came out of those discussions to eliminate this. So I would give consideration to supporting it.
I'll make a motion that we remove CPIU from, or I make a motion that we're drafting legislation to remove CPI, the way to say it, because we're going to come back and vote on this.
That's right, yeah. There'll be a resolution and
Yes, right.
four
Write the
bids.
language up.
It'd be introduced, there'll be a hearing on it.
All right, so motion by Mr. Billio to question number 2 to eliminate CPIU. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Callahan. Any further discussion on question number 2?
Only on, even that language seems clumsy as a lesser alternative cap.
Well, that's what the draft legislation is going to put together. So
Yeah, I've drafted the legislation for each of these because it's fairly straightforward. So I've got those ready. I can circulate them
I mean,
As soon as
even
this
though it's
meeting is
only-
over, I did change that. I did eliminate that from the title of that bill. So I think you'll find that the new title of that bill is a little clearer.
Even though it's only 5 words, it just sounds weird.
It's very lawyerly, yeah. So we'll try to avoid that.
Yeah, you have
But
to
I did try to use
bring it down a little bit.
better language there. And so when I circulate that, I mean, if this passes, I'll circulate that. And if that language works for you guys, then we could use that in the actual ballot question.
Good, good, good. So we know what you're getting at?
Yes.
Oh, he's gonna play with the language, so, okay.
Right.
And second by Mr. Callahan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call your roll.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Lush?
Aye.
And going up to the first ballot question, they gave us actually 3 options to consider underneath this one ballot question. Removing the cap altogether may be to one extreme. Adding a penny for 5 years may give you a compounded property tax revenue that will give you a stronger base to build upon. We're revising the cap from 2 to 3. So those are the options. What is anyone's flavor or appetite on this question?
Well, Mr. Pack, the 3%, of course, would be the longer-term fix. I'm not sure if we've got the support to do that. I would like to start by suggesting that we put forward what was once known as the price penny plan here as the means of dealing with this. What's in front of us as option C.
Option C. Okay. Any further discussion? Any of those A, option B, option C?
Well, I think, for me personally, I don't know if I'm going to go with any of the increases due to what we're in. I'm certainly willing to have them drafted so that which also buys us a little bit more time. I would say in my opinion, there's no reason to have option A drafted. I think it has less than 0 chance of passing to just eliminate it. And so rather than have the Office of Law draft that, if, depending on where the rest of the council is, if you want to have either option C or B just drafted for further discussion. I have just have one comment on each of those. The way it's written, and this would be direction to Mr. Kupersmith, is it says, for that particular one, to permit the council to add a penny. I would like it to say up to, because there might be a year that we don't do any, or there might be a year that we do a half a penny. So I want to make sure that that's clear, not only to the citizens who are voting for it, they're not saying it's absolutely going to be a penny, but for future councils, which we may or may not be part of, that when they see the language, when they say up to a penny, as opposed to it will be a penny, you know what I'm saying? It may be that's going to give them more discretion in that it's not an automatic thing. I would have the same thing to say about option B, that it would, because it says modify the annual percentage increase of real property tax to 3%. Well, again, depending on what's going on, I mean, I'm not saying our budget wouldn't need it, but depending on what's going on in the economy, it's like, oh my gosh, I need 3%, but really, I'm not going to do that to people. I'm going to do 2.25, something like that. So for either of those, I would like to see the words up to included in, and that's the only change really from what the tax referendum committee, I think that might give a little more comfort to the citizens and certainly a little more thought-provoking to future councils.
Okay. Any other comments on, I think A would probably, I would remove A out of hand myself. I think on discussion in the group put that in there, as Ms. Price said, many counties do not have a cap. I think there's only 4 counties in Maryland, 4 counties have a cap?
Yes.
3 or 4? So we're one of 4, a very small minority in the county that have in the state that have a cap. But even the group, when they gave this, I'm not going to say there wasn't support behind it, but there wasn't overwhelming support behind it, let me put it that way. But they nonetheless felt it was their job to make the recommendation. It's our job to kind of sift through it and say, well, we like this, but we don't like that. Again, it's not out of the norm. Many counties don't have a cap, and so it's worth considering, but probably for me, not as appetizing as maybe B or C. That's just my take on it. Anyone else?
I keep thinking about the current economic state that we're in, and I can't stomach the thought of any kind of tax increase at this time. And I know that we have projects going down the road. I know that we have goals down the road for things that we need to do. I have a very hard time thinking right now that when people are looking to vote on this ballot, that they're going to select any option that could increase their taxes. I see CPI-U as the problem, that it caused the bigger problem and put us in the hole. And if it hadn't been there, then we'd be in a much different position. And I'm comfortable removing that moving forward, and I think that will set us at the real base, give us a true number that we should be working within. And I think back to the last election of how people voted for the questions. And they overwhelmingly, and all of us had said, or I came out and, said, I want to see this increase, and the voters said no. And I'm trying to work within that.
So, Mr. DeVillio, we're not deciding whether or not to put them on the ballot tonight, because I'm with you. I probably won't vote for either A, B, or C. I think all we're asking is to have the Office of Law prepare the resolution.
Well, let me go this far. I mean, Mr. Kupersmith is a busy man. Ms. O'Donnell is getting her future life together. If there's not a supermajority for either A, B, or C, I don't want to waste that time in drafting something that has no chance of passing. Let's be considerate of their time. If there is both question A, question 2, and question 3, we got a 5-0 vote, so I think we probably feel, at least I do, more comfortable that there will be a supermajority vote in 2 weeks for those 2 questions. If there's not a supermajority here for A, B, or C on the question 1, then so be it. I can live with it. It's probably not ideal, but I can live with it. But I wouldn't want them to draft something just for the sake of drafting something. And then come back in 2 weeks, and you already said you're not going to go for either one of them, so why haven't drafted?
I said I probably wouldn't do A or B. I would think about C, depending on where we are in a month or so.
Okay, well, we have 4/5 here for C. Let's discuss C.
Question from Mr. Kupersmith. You said, would these be, you said you've essentially got these drafted up already. Would these be separate pieces of legislation? So each one that we address would be a separate piece of legislation. So we could, we might get 4 for B, 4 for C, we're all unanimous, and then some combination of 4 of us that would support one of these other provisions, and that would be a separate piece of legislation, which it wouldn't have to be tied to the fate of another one.
That's right. My understanding is that each of these is going to be a separate resolution and then a separate ballot question if they are approved. Mm-hmm. And so we can do numerous different versions, and each can be its own resolution if that's how you want to proceed.
But you've already written them?
I've written the constant yield because we already had the language from that for last year. The CPI-U, we already had the language for that, and the 3%, but not necessarily with the up to language. So, and then we have the price penny plan language from last time as well, so that can be retrieved easily. But I am appreciative of, it is a 4/5 vote for approving the resolution ultimately. So if we're not going to get there, then,
We're
like
not gonna get
Mr.
there.
Pack says, but it's up to you guys how you want to proceed.
Well,
So-
let me start by moving that we authorize a resolution for the penny plan, for what's offered here is option C. And we can address option B separately.
Okay, so you want to proceed with a drafting of option C for that question? Mr. Callahan, you've been
Very quiet.
very quiet. Not-
Very quiet. I'm just listening. I'm just listening. I'm struggling a little bit with it.
Well,
I think we all
honest
are.
answer.
I think we all are. We've all sort of discussed it in our little ways. And the CPI, to me as a voter, not only are you raising taxes, and that's what we're doing, there's a part of me that it's confusing when you're going to the ballot box. And there's so many things on there that the average person isn't going to understand it. And I know we're going to be doing a campaign, but I'm just, it was pretty clear cut, like Mr. Revelio said, a few years ago that it passed.
But they were all together. How was,
Yeah, I understand, but so, and me and Mr. Busher talked today a little bit about these options. The option idea isn't a bad option I understand it, but I just don't think the voters are going to understand it. And that's where I'm struggling with it. That when they go to the ballot box and they see all these different options on taxes, it's going to confuse them. And I think that could hurt us.
But they're not going to see, different options. They're going to see 3 questions.
Well, but that's options.
Yeah. Well, questions, but saying different things. So,
That's kind of a point, if they don't understand it.
well, yeah, it's going to require some education, and this is
Yeah.
what the committee looked at when they came together, that the question the last time was very poorly educated amongst the voters. There was not a strong, concentrated effort to get out in front of different groups and educate them on what this means and what it doesn't mean.
Right.
And I even heard from voters myself that said they didn't understand it, as to your point, so they voted against it. They didn't understand the implication.
Yeah.
So it will require some education. The reason why the committee also wanted to break up into 3 separate questions, because they felt that the way it was worded 2 years ago was too heavy of a question to digest. You're in the booth, you're trying to get in, you're trying to get out, and to try to digest that much language in that time period was just too much. So that was the reason for separating it into 3 separate, smaller pieces of ballot question. So, but I understand your point, but I think that the committee also took all into consideration, and that's why we see it as 3 separate questions, scaled down, and Mr. Kupersmith has even scaled the language down even some more, so that the average citizen can go in there and read a couple lines and say, that sounds good to me, but that doesn't sound appealing to me, yes or no.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. So, I don't know, is there an appetite to move forward, having Mr. Kupersmith delve into this 1 cent increase beginning FY '21? If there's not, then let's move on. We have a couple more matters to address tonight.
Mrs. Lane, was there one of these 3 that came out with a majority opinion, or did you guys not vote for?
We didn't vote.
Okay.
We felt our direction was to make recommendations to you, and that the council would make that decision.
Okay. And have you disbanded the group, or do you think that they would be willing to continue for maybe 2 more years?
2 more years.
Because what I'm thinking,
I just heard Joe fall off his chair.
I'm just thinking it's one of the most unique groups I've seen put together, and they serve many different groups. When I think about what the ballot's going to look like with this next coming up presidential election, what people are going to be voting for in Talbot County, my fear is that if this fails 2 times in a row, there's not a 3rd shot for it. And that's why I'm very happy to move forward with getting rid of CPI, because I know that that's a clear-cut fix. The rest of these are just sort of financial goals for how quickly we want to get to where we want to be or have the ability to do. And I noticed that was really frustrating for me being on this council with COVID-19 right now, thinking we have departments that are in serious need of money, and it would be great to be able to just give them a big chunk of change to take care of things, but we can't. And you know, as we see different boards, different groups needing and hurting, there's not the opportunity to do that. But I also like that, and I like having to work within a small box that's been given to us. And I think that that's what the community's been saying. Fix the problem, but don't overburden us. And I think that that's where removing CPI is.
Okay, well, that's very, very well stated. To your point, the committee will remain while they go through the education piece of it. Of course, it's going to be completely different now that we're in the new COVID world. We may have to rely on more virtual means of communicating, maybe small groups of 10 or less. But the team was reserved or resigned to get out in front of people and promote whatever this council came up with. So if it's just CPI, hey, we move CPIU, it's going to be an easier discussion, a quicker discussion. And if that's all we have for them to educate on, then that's it. It sounds like to me you want to hold off on anything else as far as option C. You can always come back and add it on in 2 years for the councilmatic election, if not for the gubernatorial presidential election. So give them another shot.
I do think that it's important to do this now for a couple of reasons, and to get it on the ballot this fall when we have a much less crowded ballot. We will be voting for president, we will be voting for congressman, and we will be voting for, in a couple district school board representative. There were very few other offices on this ballot, unlike the councilmanic elections in 2 years, which is a very crowded ballot.
Sure.
Which is every state office, every county office up at the same time. That less crowding on the ballot will help in terms of voter education. It will help in terms of voter attention to this issue. Plus, we know very well that we have reserves, and we are using those reserves. We will be using those reserves this coming year and probably the following year to get us through an economic downturn. We know that is not a sustainable path forward. We know that absent this type of fix in the longer term, we cannot keep an incentive package for our sheriff's deputies out there, including a retirement package, which we know we need to improve. We cannot extend emergency services to provide reliable ambulance service to the northeastern part of the county, which we know we need to do. We're already providing that surge service. We don't have a way of paying for that. We don't have a way for paying for those capital costs. For the capital costs of the sheriff's department, for the capital costs of the health department, absent this. This just can't wait. We have, I think, an opportunity to do this. I think that we really need to do this, and there's urgency to it. We also have a team behind us in this property tax referendum committee that are willing to help us do the education piece on this. And I think we've got partners beyond that who will be willing to help us do the education piece. I agree with Mr. Callahan very much that voter confusion, if voters do not understand a ballot question, that ballot question goes down in flames. Of these things, the one that we care about the least, the legalistic language about how the tech, that's the one that is most likely to cause voter confusion. The penny is probably the easiest one. It's easier, frankly, than the CPIU. If this goes down in flames, it's not because voters won't understand it. We have our opportunity to make the case for why this is needed for the fiscal health of this county. And we need the voters to understand that, look, just because this council has the ability, this vote, this plebiscite, this ballot question will not raise taxes. It will simply give the council the option to do so. And what the voters should do is elect a council that they trust with their finances, with their taxes. I think we've got that in place, and this council is showing the public right now by not raising taxes in the way that we have the option to do this year. We're demonstrating this is the perfect opportunity because this council will have the credibility to talk about that. This is the time to do this.
Okay, so let me propose this. We don't have to decide tonight whether this is going on the ballot. That's not what we're doing tonight. I would say, and I'm probably the hardest one to convince on any of this. However, I do agree, because it's kind of why it was written the way a couple of years ago, it's an easy one to understand. The language is pretty much already prepared. Let's let the resolution be prepared. Let's have this conversation with input from, we've already started getting some letters, in whatever format of public hearing that we can have, because it is still May. So we have an opportunity to continue this conversation at a resolution public hearing.
Okay.
It's not really additional work. You've pretty much already got the language written. What I would say, and while we always want to hear from everybody, including our county employees, I know that for me, I need to hear from the average citizen, because while I absolutely love my sheriff's deputies and emergency services workers and stuff, this tax increase is going to go to directly benefit them, as they deserve. However, it's a little bit of a jaded perspective, right? You want to have a better retirement plan, you need the money to pay for it, so I'm going to send you a letter to the county council. I want to hear from them. I do need to hear from the average citizen, those who are going to be impacted, because out of 37,000 citizens, we have 250 county employees and several hundred school employees. Again, we don't have to worry about the school employees. That's the other thing. The Maintenance of Effort Law of 2012 already takes care of them. We can choose to add an education supplement or not. Again, I need to hear from the average employee. So let's at least give an opportunity to hear from them. And if the resolution doesn't pass by 4/5, so be it. We're not any worse than we were. And maybe if we don't put it on, we will have learned some information for when we do put it on in 2 years. But I do agree it is a less crowded ballot. Because when you've got 10 people running for county council and all delegates and stuff, and everybody's campaigning on a local level, that part I would agree with. I'm not convinced. What we're living in and raising taxes is horrible, and that's what's keeping me away from it. But I'm certainly willing to have the resolution drafted and to do whatever we can outreach-wise to hear from the average citizen. Maybe that's something the group can help us with. Not so much education right now, but getting information out, whether it is a PSA on the radio saying, we need to hear from you all before we put this on the ballot, and get their feedback. So I'll second your motion to have a resolution drafted for option C, but that doesn't mean that we're going to put it on the ballot yet.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on option C. And to be clear, Mr. Lesher, could you read that option for the record, please,
Yes.
on option C?
Sorry, it's all closed down on me.
Here it is.
This is recommending, allow the county council to add an additional cent to property tax rate every year for the next 5 fiscal years. So the language, the ballot language would be permit the county council to add a 1 cent increase above the tax cap limit in each of the next 5 fiscal years, beginning July 1st, 2021.
Okay.
And so what I would,
Second that.
I would addendum that or amend that to say up to, and it also says every year for the next 5 years. And you don't have to do it. I just want it to be clear that just like this year, we're choosing not to do it. It's not a requirement. So that's the only part you really need to finesse, is to have that language reflect that.
So it's not an automatic increase, whichever council seated over those 5-year period can add it or not add it, or add half a cent and not the whole cent. And perhaps that would give the two gentlemen to my right, as they ponder this over the next week or so.
Right, but we're not voting on doing
Okay.
it tonight.
So this is,
I understand that.
okay, we have a motion and a second. This is just to send the language to Mr. Kupersmith, who'll draft it, he'll get it back to us. We'll have the hearing in 2 weeks, and
And to be clear, you know, from the motion, I support the added language from the seconder.
oh, yes, okay, well, thank you. Okay, Madam Secretary? No, there you go. Sorry.
Mr.
Sorry.
Black?
Yeah, aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Callahan,
Aye.
Ms. Price,
Aye.
Mr. Lusher.
Aye.
Okay, so this will go to Office of Law for drafting. We have a 5-0 motion to do so, and we'll bring this back in 2 weeks, and we'll see where we are.
And again, Mr. Pack, for the same reason, so that we can hear from the public on this,
Oh, absolutely.
that we also draft up the language for option B, which would read with Ms. Price's addition, modify the cap on revenues generated by real estate taxes from 2% up to 3%.
What was that?
What's up?
You wait.
It's option B.
You
Do
confused.
option B
This
as
is
well.
the 3%.
Oh, wait a minute. Now, you're muddying the water now. You get a nice clean vote, now you're adding stuff to it.
No, he's asking to have that language be drafted in addition.
I'm not voting for that, but go ahead, but you can make the motion.
Again, this would put option, draft the legislation for option B as well, which would allow the 3%.
I think we need to be really simple and clear now that we've got one
Yeah,
draft.
if there's not support for this, I'm just kind of leery about even having him draft this. But you can make your motion and,
So I want to ask Mr. Lusher one thing. So your thought process was you'd want both of those if you could on the ballot.
Hmm.
Well, I think we probably can't do
One or the
both. This
other.
would allow us to consider one or the other and to hear public input.
Okay,
on
I
which or
just
the
want to
other.
make myself clear that you didn't want both of them.
It is presented to us as an option B or C. It wasn't intended to be one on top of the other.
Okay.
okay. So you're making now another motion, so I'll pull the paper out again. So what motion are you making now under option B?
This would be the language at the bottom, the last of the two, the one that starts modify the cap on revenues generated by real estate taxes
Okay.
from 2% to 3%, or if you will, up to 3%.
All right. Okay, is there a second on that? All right. Here, no second, Mr. Lasher, your motion fails. Okay. So we'll just go with those 1, 2, 3 questions. And Mr. Kupersmith, you got the direction on that?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that ends the property tax recommendation. Ms. Lane, again, thank you very much. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay.
Should see me next.
Oh, you're next, okay. Council, next thing, you're not going anywhere. Next on your agenda, we have introduction of administrative resolution. Madam Secretary, would you please read the title for us, please?
A resolution of Talbot County, Maryland, the county authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds in a principal amount not exceeding $24,795,000 pursuant to the authority of Bill number 1441, enacted by the County Council of Talbot County on February 11, 2020, the public local law. Section 10-203 of the local government article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, 2013, replacement volume as amended, the Enabling Act, and Section 623 of the Charter of Talbot County, Maryland, the Charter. The bonds to be designated Talbot County Public Improvement Bonds, Series 2020, the net proceeds of the sale thereof to be used and applied for the public purpose of financing or refinancing the planning, design, construction, and furnishing of a new Easton Elementary School and the demolition of the existing Easton Elementary School, prescribing the form and tenor of the bonds and the terms and conditions for the issuance and sale thereof at private or public sale, including the form of a notice of sale prescribing the terms and conditions of the bonds and all other details incident to the issuance, sale, and delivery of the bonds, providing for the disbursement of the proceeds of the bonds, authorizing the preparation and distribution of a preliminary and final official statement in connection with the sale of the bonds, providing for the levy and collection of any taxes necessary for the prompt payment of the maturing principal of and interest on the bonds, and providing that the full faith and credit and taxing power of Talbot County, Maryland shall be pledged to the payment of such principal and interest, subject to the limitation of the tax levy set out in section 614 of the Charter of Talbot County, and generally relating to the issuance, sale, delivery, and payment of the bonds.
Thank you very much, Secretary. Ms. Lane, do you have a condensed version of what we just heard?
Yes, this is actually this administrative resolution is the final piece of authorizing the county to actually sell bonds for the Easton Elementary School. We have capital enabling legislation for the capital project itself. Council has already approved legislation authorizing the sale of bonds, but before we can actually do that, we have to have this administrative resolution that this sets out most of the terms and conditions of the bonds.
Okay.
And just for your information, we are planning on selling the bonds in early June right now. That's our tentative date.
Okay, any questions of Ms. Lane?
Just one question, and that's if the legal office has to buy a box of chocolates for Mrs. Moran before they draft the title of legislation.
This is actually our bond counsel. They're very worried.
I have one question. Maybe I didn't follow along in it close enough. I thought it was going to be, was it a $30 million cap is what we were willing to?
$30 million is our share of the project, but we transferred $4,205,000 from the general fund and $1 million from the development impact fund to cover the cost. So the net amount is the 24 million, 700.
I didn't know if we came in that far under.
Yeah.
No.
That would have been nice.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Chair would ask for, Madam Secretary, since we're on the phone, I'm going to ask for a roll call for the introduction, please.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Lusher?
Aye.
Administrative resolution is introduced by council. Mr. Kupersmith has stepped out. This matter can be moved to vote this evening, I believe, as an administrative resolution. The chair would entertain a motion to move this matter to vote this evening, if any member of council wishes to do so.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Lusher to move the vote, seconded by Mr. DeVillio. Is there any further discussion on moving this matter to vote tonight? Hearing none, on moving the matter to vote tonight, Madam Secretary, would you please call your roll?
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Lusher?
Aye.
The administrative resolution is now before council for vote. It does not need to be read a second time, Mr. Hollis, correct, as administrative resolution? No.
Ms. Moran should start the title.
Ms. Moran, please, if you wouldn't mind reading the administrative resolution before vote.
A resolution of
I
Talbot
ask
County,
that so much
Maryland.
be considered a reading.
Any objection to Mrs. Price's
Share
motion?
your cookies and chocolate with me.
Thank you very much. The administrative resolution is now before us for final vote. Any additional comment before we take vote? This is to sell these bonds so we can go ahead and pay for our elementary school, our portion of the school. Ms. Lane explained to us that the numbers have been adjusted as we use some other funds to limit our borrowing exposure, if you would. So instead of borrowing the whole 30 million, we're only borrowing 24 million. Anyway, that's it. Madam Secretary, would you please call your vote on the administrative resolution?
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Lusher?
Aye.
Matter passes. Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you very
Lane.
much.
Council, next on your agenda, moving right along, we have resolution, public hearing on resolution 282. I'm going to ask Madam Secretary to read the title, and Mr. Clark is coming to the table for some background.
Resolution number 282, a resolution to amend the Talbot County Comprehensive Water and Sewer Plan to reclassify and remap real property located at 24500 Rolls Range Road, St. Michael's, Maryland, 21663, further described as tax map 23, parcel 41, from unprogrammed to S1 immediate priority status.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Mr. Clark, I can get some information from our boards and committees on this as well?
Yeah, very quickly. Mr. Workman submitted an application and then on our short plan that was presented to the Planning Commission on October 45th. At that Planning Commission meeting, the entire property was being brought in as the S1 area during that Planning Commission.
Ray, can you speak up, please?
Okay, during that Planning Commission meeting, I guess, the wooded lands on that property were basically, I guess, in the critical areas, so the thought was to pull those out of the S1 area. But the S1 area only would include, let's say, the developed portion of the property. During discussions with the Planning Commission, Mr. Workman basically suggested even pulling it back down to the southern edge of the swimming pool. So that was now how it's set up, is that the portion of the lot that's being brought into the sewer service area includes the two buildings that make up the B&B, as well as that section of that property. The Planning Commission, I think, then voted under that proposed change, finding that consistent with the comp plan via a 5-0 vote. I think they went to the county council. The county council introduced an amendment to the resolution that ultimately adopted what was presented before the Planning Commission. We then met with the Public Works Advisory Board on May 6th. This last week, during the Public Works Advisory Board meeting, the Public Works Advisory Board reviewed the application and ultimately voted 5-0, recommending that the County Council approve Resolution 282 with the amendment. And at this point, I know the comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Any questions, Mr. Clark, on the amendment or the Resolution 282?
So I guess I just have a question for the legal office. The amendment has been introduced but not voted on, so we would need to vote on the amendment first before
I thought we took care of the amendment at our last meeting when we forwarded it over to the Planning Commission, no?
I guess we'd have to look at the record, but I think what we've done is we've introduced the amendments and then referred them
Yeah, the
for recommendations, and then
they were introduced.
then they are amended. Then we actually vote on the amendment.
So the amendment was introduced, voted on, sent over to the Planning Commission for their review.
I think we've been introducing the amendments, but not voting on them yet, and referring them to the boards. And then when we get the board's recommendations, after we have their information, we're saying.
So what
You don't vote prior to getting the recommendation.
no, right, but, okay. What we have before us is the recommendation as amended.
From the Public Works Advisory Board
Right.
as well as the Planning Commission.
Right, so what we have before us is not two separate things. We have the 282 as amended.
We have not voted on the amendment yet, so.
True, but we have before us, the recommendation is 282 as amended.
Right, so I think you're right.
So we would need to vote on the amendment in accordance with, to bring it up to where the recommendation is.
I don't think that is correct, but
No, voted on the
unless
amendment.
Mr. Kupersmith tells me otherwise,
Well, for instance, I know we're not talking about this, but with Resolution 281, I know with that one, Lakeside Trap, there was an amendment that was offered, and then that amendment was referred to the board, the Public Works Advisory Board and the Planning Commission for their review. But it has not been voted on, and it will be voted on when it goes back to you guys. And then the resolution will be amended if you amend it.
we can do it either way. So, Madam Secretary, could you go to your amendment on 282, and if you would read the amended portion of 282.
Okay, the amendments proposed are as follows. Whereas on February 5th, 2020, the Talbot County Planning Commission held a hearing to determine if this resolution as drafted is consistent with the comprehensive plan. At such hearing, the owner agreed to amend his request such that only a portion of the property will be reclassified and remapped from the current classification of unprogrammed to S1 immediate priority status, as reflected in the amended Exhibit A attached here too. The Planning Commission found such amended request consistent with the comprehensive plan and referred this matter back to the County Council for further action.
Okay, so that's the amended language on the amendment. You also have maps that go along with the amended language. Any questions on the language of the amendment or the maps that are associated with it?
Well, in section 2, there is also a,
Yeah, go ahead and read that as well. That's those two pieces.
the added portion for the amendment says, section 2, the Talbot County Comprehensive Water and Sewer Plan, the plan is amended to reclassify and remap, and the section that's added, a portion of the property from the current classification 1 program to S1 immediate priority status, as shown and described on the Comprehensive Water and Sewer Plan worksheet prepared by the Talbot County Department of Public Works, and it's dated February 11th, 2020, and attached hereto as amended Exhibit A.
So on the first map, we see the whole parcel there, lot 41. Right below it, we see only that green portion, the green slither, is what will be added in, not the whole entire lot. Any questions there? Okay, so let's do this in pieces then. On the amendment, can I have a chair would entertain a motion on just the amendment?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Lecter, second by Mr. DeVillio. Any further questions on the amendment? Okay, just to vote on the amendment, Madam Secretary, please call your roll.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Lush?
Aye.
So now we've taken care of that. 282 is now amended to change the lot
Can I ask a
size.
really silly question? Isn't this a public hearing first?
Yeah, but it is a public hearing, you're right. So,
So shouldn't we have done public hearing before we then really run it?
got me all confused here tonight. Yes, the amendment will be also eligible for discussion on the public hearing side of this. Did we receive any written comment?
No.
No.
Is there anybody on the phone?
Yes, so this has been our most popular meeting. At one time, we've had 25 people on this call.
Okay. Then I'm going to paddle back then. We have the introduction, we have the amendment that's been read before us. Although we did have a vote on the amendment, we're going to save that off pending the public hearing, until after the public hearing. So, Madam, Ms. Morris, why don't you go ahead and open the phone lines for the public hearing on 282 as amended, and who we have first?
Okay, we are opening up the phone lines for the public hearing on resolution number 282. It appears that we still have approximately 5 or 6 callers on the line. If you'd like to speak one by one, identify yourselves, please give your name and address. The floor is open. Does anyone wish to make any comments on resolution number 282? The floor is open. Apparently no comments from the callers.
Okay, callers, once again, council is holding a public hearing on resolution 282. It has been amended, or the amendment has been suggested by the Public Works Advisory Board, as well as the Planning Commission. They have found consistency, and the council will entertain any comment on resolution 282 at this time. Okay, Ms. Morris, it appears that listeners do not wish to make comment. Therefore, council, I will go ahead and close the public hearing on 282. And let's go back to where we were just a moment ago, which was we now have an amendment. I believe we had a motion by Mr. Lesher on the amendment. We had the amendment second by Mr. DeVillio. None of the public hearing is over. If there's no further question on the amendment, Madam Secretary, now call your roll on the amendment, please.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Lush?
Aye.
Okay, 282 has now been amended. Any questions on 282 as amended? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call your roll on 282 as amended.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Lush?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for public for listening in on the discussion. 282 passes as amended. County Manager, Mr. Hollis, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. Quickly, several board appointments for the airport board, requesting the reappointment of Charles Daffin and Jack Pettit.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mrs. Price,
Second.
seconded by Mr. DeVillio. Madam Secretary, please call your roll. It's on Charles Jaffin and Jack Pettit for reappointment to the airport board.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Lush?
Aye.
Emergency Services Advisory Board, requesting the reappointment of Wayne Dyatt and Ruth Sullivan.
The motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. DeVillio, seconded by Mr. Callahan. This is for the reappointment of Wayne Dyer and Ms. Ruth Sullivan to the Emergency Services Advisory Board, which is an excellent board, by the way. Madam Secretary, please call your roll.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Lush?
Aye.
For the Weed Control Committee, requesting the appointment of Jay Shortle.
Is there a motion for Dre Show, weed control guy, said, made the motion? Mr. DeVillio, seconded by Mr. Callahan for Mr. Shortle. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Lush?
Aye.
And finally, requesting a letter of support for the Maryland Rural Development Corporation for a 2-year housing preservation program in Talbot County with the intention of reducing the cost of home repair and rehabilitation and to improve general living conditions. No county dollars are involved.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. DeVillio, seconded by Mr. Callahan. Any further comment? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call your roll.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Lush?
Aye.
That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hollis. Okay, which brings us down to council comment. Mr. DeVillio, I'll explain it over to you
Public.
first.
Public comment?
I'm sorry, yeah, I just grabbed my paper here. Are there any public comment, Mrs.
We
Moore?
received no public comment.
No public comment? Okay, public comment is not over with. Council comment.
Are we letting the callers speak?
Yes, I will.
Yeah, I mean, if they're on the line, they wish to be heard. Callers, we're going to open up the line for public comment. If anyone's on the line wish to give public comment, now's the time to do so. I think we heard something there. How long can we start?
Okay, ma'am, please go ahead. Please state your name and address.
This is Jody Hardesty. I live at 300 Dixon Street in Easton, Maryland.
Okay, go ahead, please. Jody Hardesty is on the line.
Jody Hudson, yes. Go ahead, Ms. Hudson, we can hear you.
Okay, good evening, council. First, I'd like to acknowledge you for thoughtfully considering the needs of our county. Thank you for the work you're doing and the time you're giving. We really do appreciate that. As we continue to navigate the uncertainties of the pandemic, I wanted to bring some things to your attention and to make a subsequent request. With some adaptations, the county has been operational. As is the case today, you're holding meetings, whether virtually or within the recommendations of social distancing. There has been a continuation of application processes for most, if not all businesses in the county, except for short-term rentals. Other than the renewal applications, all other applications for new licenses have been put on hold indefinitely. If every other agency can function with some flexibility, why not the short-term rental review board? Our industry is one that has been continuously targeted by local citizens who consider themselves the police of planning and zoning, and it's being left unchecked. We've had hearings in which these citizens and even board members refer to visitors to Talbot County as outsiders, foreigners, and police dogs. The comment about foreigners was especially offensive, so moved to reschedule the hearing. I respectfully request that you register. Considering the economic contribution these visitors make, I would like to assure you that when we are allowed to operate and welcome people back to the area, we are taking every precaution to do so safely. We want to provide accommodations for families who are just as concerned about their health and safety as you are. Eastern Vacation Rentals has implemented the following policies. 1, we will encourage guests to use local delivery services for groceries. 2, we will encourage our guests to purchase from local businesses, taking advantage of modified services for restaurants. 3, we'll encourage our guests to come prepared with required personal protective equipment. 4, we're modifying check-in and check-out hours to allow for extended CDC-compliant cleaning and disinfection of properties. 5, we're working with vendors and in compliance with CDC guidelines for the latest cleaning tools and supplies. And 6, our guests will each sign a waiver stating that they understand and agree to provide the social distancing rules, to confirm that they haven't demonstrated symptoms for 14 days, and if they display symptoms, they will shelter in place immediately. With these precautions in place, we can ease back into the business of welcoming people into the county, and I hope to do so sooner rather than later. The small business owners who are supporting our schools and the underprivileged in our community need our support in return. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. We appreciate your comments. Is anyone else on the line for public comment?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you say your name one more time for us, please? Okay, Ms. Carter, we can hear you. Laura Hardy.
Laura Carney.
Carney. Okay, Ms. Carney, thank you. Please make your statement.
It goes without saying that we are all very concerned about balancing the repercussions of the virus along with saving our local economy from complete disaster. By delaying reopening, so many small businesses will have to close. It is everything else we can for years. Of course, we have the essential businesses, which are allowed to be open, but the justification of qualifying as essential is so confusing to most residents. The local garden centers and the food shops are open to go downtown shops and eat. Michael's is essential. Essential workers together car wash and the rest of them can't. I guess I'd love for someone to explain the logic because it just doesn't make sense to me. Especially the goal is to keep everybody safe. The St. Michael's Inn has its sign out saying we are open, yet we who responsibly rent and manage our homes not be. Again, I'm not understanding the hypocrisy or double standards here. We personally at our own homes have 8 different guests who want to come stay at our home in summer. All are involved families who have been following the stay-at-home mandate in their own state, and actually federal law for Maryland. Some camps were canceled, so these families just want to come to a place where they can relax and have their kids be able to swim and play. These guests have no interest in standing in line with the mountains at boats. Instead, they'll be ordering takeout from our restaurant, renting kayaks and bikes, chartering fishing boats, and ordering steamed crab. Yes, they will be supporting the local businesses in a responsible and safe way. Dutchmans economic development and tourism exists to promote this area of businesses. They do a fabulous job and have helped make this area a destination for many. Now, however, vibrant communities find themselves in dire straits. In the last meeting held by the council, I believe Councilwoman Price said she doesn't want anyone coming here. Look at those who said the same thing about people heading to the Hamptons or the Cape. There ended up being no evidence of more COVID cases because people adhere to the guidelines. Why continue to prevent visitors from coming and having safe places to stay? Especially if you're saying the local inns and hotels can be open. It just makes no sense. Our local economy is on the brink of disaster, and these guests may very well be the saving grace in keeping many of these businesses afloat. In paraphrasing Delegate Adams, government can do great many and productive things, however, can also be a dramatic, negative disruptor to the free market. We must trust in the ability of our citizens to make most decisions for themselves
Any other callers on the line? Any other callers on the line?
No.
Okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and close the public hearing at this time then. That was good, that was good.
We know it works.
Yeah, it works, good comments.
We have a little echo chamber going on.
And let me just jump in real quick and address some of both of the callers. We certainly appreciate them hanging on and giving their comments. The STR board, as you know, based on this council's emergency declaration, any board and committee can come to the county manager and make petitions to hold hearings if the county manager sees fit that those hearings need to be done. Conversation I had with Ms. Verdery today, they are looking to go ahead and restart the hearings for STRs. She is looking if May 20th is acceptable format. She's going to be talking with Mr. Hollis about holding a hearing before the end of the month. So those hearings should resume shortly. Again, she was just telling me today that she's looking into it. It sounds like she's already had a date in mind, and she has to work through the county manager's office to get his okay to sign off on it as well with the Office of Law, so that can be done safely. So to the caller, if she's still online, Ms. Hardesty, just look for that announcement of that hearing date, hopefully sometime before the end of the month. One comment the second caller made regarding car washes. The caller is there was an exception on car washes initially by the governor, but they were only for essential vehicles only. That has recently changed. Car washes are open now to the general public. I think the one wet dog was crowded the other day, so car washes are open. And look, this is going to be a slow process getting the county back open. Conversations we had today on the call with the governor was that they're looking to allow some autonomy of local counties as to how the opening should go. They're recognizing that what's happened in Prince George's County is not indicative of what's happening on the Eastern Shore. So they are sensitive that there are levels of infection across the state, and so likewise those counties should make appropriate input on how they're open. One footnote he made very, very clear is that just because the authority is granted for the counties to proceed doesn't mean the counties have to proceed. It's still going to be up to those counties and local municipalities working with the health officer to coordinate how they want to proceed. This is not the full-blown phase one, but it's working into that phase one approach. And of course, phase two, as Dr. Griffith was saying earlier today, would allow a larger group activity. And of course, phase three would give even larger activities. He was saying today on the phone, the governor, was that they were also in conversation with the Orioles because they want to start baseball with no fans, and how would that look? And that's not necessarily a phase one approach, but how would you do that to fit within those phase one requirements? So it's a slow process. I know they're looking at other states and seeing what's happening in Georgia and other areas that went to a full opening. Some of them have seen spikes in infections since they opened. So they're watching that, and I think we need to watch that as well. But very, very good comments. But STR should start holding their public hearing shortly. Well, not public hearing, but their hearing shortly, and the county manager will coordinate that with the planning officer to do so. So I just want to touch bases on those two comments real quick. So I think I was throwing it back over to Mr. Villio for council comment.
I've opened my mouth enough.
Mr. Callahan, anything from you?
No, I'm good.
Ms. Price, anything from you?
Well, that's dangerous. I would like to comment a little bit. On the last caller, I think you oversimplified my quote. I didn't say I didn't want anybody to come here. I said that Talbot County had done an exceptional job in the fact that we only had at the time probably 40 cases, and now we're 50 or 60, and only one death. And part of that was because we did self-contained, and when you don't know where someone else is coming from, because you can't really ask that question, bringing it in from another area is a possibility. And I was elected to take care of the citizens who are here, and I also felt like that was going to go against the governor's orders of stay at home. I mean, we shouldn't be having anybody in our hotels or our bed and breakfast or our short-term rentals or, anywhere for that matter if you're on a stay-at-home order, and it's only supposed to be for essential travel. So to oversimplify my comment that I don't want anybody coming here is really not true. I'm trying to deal with this as a matter of what's going on. I would agree that government at this point, at all levels, is probably, it's time. It's beyond time to open up businesses, and I don't like the classifications of essential and non-essential. I think we needed to do that probably, for the first month. I think we know where the infections are and where the risk factors are, when over half the deaths are in nursing homes. We know who's vulnerable. And so I certainly hope, and if that were up to me, I would open up businesses. I think restaurants are a little different. We have to figure out how to deal with those. But in my opinion, my little business is opened and considered essential, but I've got Joanne Fabrics right behind me, and why would Michael's be allowed to be open and not Joanne Fabrics? I agree with those type of comments. And I think that we do need to do this as a regional approach, not just from state to state, but as regions within counties. So if that's what it comes to, if that's what the governor says, that we can start making some decisions on businesses and those types of orders, I would welcome the authority to have that discussion with my fellow council members to go that way, because regions are different, and we've done a good job here. You don't want to open the door to have people, flooding in, and like we had that conversation the other day about playgrounds. When they opened up the outside, and if St. Michael's opened up their playgrounds, but Easton didn't, that you would have, everybody flooding from one to the area. So there has to be a little bit of unanimity on those decisions. But I think, rural parts of Maryland, Eastern Shore and Western Maryland, should have maybe a little bit more leeway than Prince George's and Montgomery County. As a matter of fact, bigger county executives wrote to the governor, and if the governor were to open up to phase 1, I could believe Angela Alsobrooks from PG and the gentleman from Montgomery County said they're not ready yet, and that would probably be wise for them to do what's best for their area. So all that's to say, I certainly hope that we start moving forward. Businesses are getting absolutely decimated, crucified. There are already businesses who will never come back from this, even if we opened up tomorrow. It's really breaks my heart to see what's going on, and I think that government at all levels needs to start backing off at this point and let businesses are going to do the right thing. If they don't, their customers are going to let them know it, and they're not going to go there. I don't know that, I'm kind of giving an opinion here, phasing in, I think it's natural. I think you have a certain segment of the population who, when businesses open, a certain segment is going to go. You got another third of the people are going to sit there and watch a little bit, see what happens, and then you've got some people who are so darn scared out of their minds, they're not going anywhere for the next year or two. So I think that phasing in is going to be something that's natural, and I think it's time to trust our businesses and to trust people to do the right thing and let government start getting out of the way. I think it's time.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Mr. Lesher?
Nothing further.
Yeah, certainly here the call is loud and clear. On that first caller, Jody, if she would send those recommendations into us, we would certainly like to have that kind of input from the business community, so that as we start considering our opening phases, our approach, we may want to incorporate some of those ideas into our opening. So if Jody's still on the line, maybe we can reach out to her and see if she wouldn't mind sharing those recommendations from Eastern Shore Rental. I for one, would like to take a look at them just to see if it's something we might want to do down the road. We're not there yet. We're getting close. We're not there yet. I think the approach that the government is rolling out is a very prudent one. Instead of just opening the whole state all at one time, allow for a slow opening, a rolling opening, if you would, in certain areas which can handle it or hope to handle it, and see how it goes before you, again, open up a Prince George's County or Baltimore City, which are seeing very elevated cases of deaths, not just infection, but also deaths. And those areas also have a very large African American population, which this disease disproportionately impacts. So they're very mindful of that as well. But I certainly understand. I can hear the emotion in the caller's voice. So we're working towards that, and we'll hear from Ms. Brady on the date for the STR board meeting, and we'll advertise that as soon as she and Mr. Hollis be able to work that out shortly. With that being said, I also want to say real quick, I just want to really give a shout out to the governor and to Secretary Bobby Neal. We were down to maybe a week's supply of testing at Chesapeake College. Dr. Ciatola and Dr. Watley were trying to get more test kits for that site because of various things. They could not get their hands on any. But the state did step up and obligating, I believe it was 100 tests per week, it's not 100 tests a week. So just want to make sure that they get recognized for that effort. Testing is key, and that site has already done over 1,000 tests so far. So getting those additional tests from the state will certainly help out. So I just wanted to recognize the state for that as well. That being said, the County Council's next meeting will be held on Tuesday, May the 19th, beginning at 6 p.m. here in the White Oak Room. The council will be convening in open session at 4:30, and then immediately adjourning into closed session to discuss real estate, legal, personnel matters as listed on the statement for closing that meeting. I'm requesting a motion to declare May the 19th as a special legislative day for the purpose of enacting Bill 1445, an act to establish the 2020-2021 annual budget appropriation ordinance. Is there a motion to do so? Moved by Mr. Callahan, second by Mrs. Price. Any further discussion? May the 19th as a special legislative day. Secretary, please call your roll.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Rush?
Aye.
Okay. Ms. Marsh, any other matters for council?
That's it, thank you.
Okay, we reached the end of our agenda. We adjourn. Thank you.